You're in for a treat. Thank you, Brian. We have started our fifth Activity Strong Summit, dubbed Dementia Disco. And there's a lot of reasons why we wanted to call this event Dementia Disco. One is that we love to celebrate. We love to celebrate life, and we strongly believe that there is a life. There is a very full life, even after a diagnosis of dementia. And like I prompted the audience on our first session, maybe a question to think about when you think about dementia and dementia inclusion is, again, if I told you I had dementia, would you treat me differently, and why? So with that, we're going to jump into our second session. I'd love to invite Dina Simonis and Chris Cheek to turn on the camera, unmute themselves, and I'm just going to read housekeeping elements before we dive into our panel. Hi, Dina. Hi, Chris. Thank you for being with us. Hi.
Good morning.
Hi, Chris. So just as a quick reminder, we can earn CUs up to 6 NAB, NCAP, NCTRC, and NCCDPC credits today. To earn the credits, you just need to attend the full session, so as few as 1, as many as 6. And to get it, you just need to fill in the CU survey no later than midnight, June 28th, so that we can process your certificate of attendance, and again, issue up to 6 CUs of these different agencies. Just as a note, and because of the high number of attendees, the certificates will be sent out via email throughout the week of July 8th, because of the holiday weekend, and until July 12th. So if you have any question, always reach out, and we have a specific email, which is webinars with an S, webinars@linksenior.com. As a reminder, this session is being recorded, so you'll be able to share it with your friends and I don't know if you want to say family, well, maybe family even, for your colleagues. And as a reminder, the Q&A and chat features are enabled. To chat with everyone, make sure that you select everyone in the dropdown. And then the last reminder, which is my own personal favorite, it's I hope you learn, I hope you have fun. All right. So our second session today is called C-Level Leadership to Enable Purpose of Resident Engagement. Unfortunately, James Lee was not able to join us, but we had a few preparatory calls, and I'm very confident we'll be able to at least give the essence of some of his thoughts. But we're also joined with Dina Simonis, who's the CEO of English Meadows Senior Living Communities, and Chris Cheek, who's the CEO of Centricare. So I'm going to unshare my screen to have a nice discussion, the three of us. And maybe let's get started. Dina, Chris, I want to personally thank you as the CEO of your organization for the time you spent with us to prepare this and just the time together. Obviously, having CEOs on this event is essential for us to just validate how important our topic is. So in terms of introduction, Chris, do you want to start and share a little bit about yourself and your organization?
Sure. Glad to be here. And Charles, thanks for having us. I'm Chris Cheek. I'm one of the founders of Centricare, which we founded in 1993. And we have operated a number of assisted living and nursing home communities, primarily in Mississippi and also in Arkansas and Louisiana. Then we have a rehab hospital in Louisiana as well. So my experience is pretty broad across the spectrum. Developed a couple other businesses related to that space as well. Developed the first memory care property specifically in Mississippi, and then later converted it to something a little different that we can discuss later in the talk. But anyway, I'm glad to be here. I've enjoyed my career of almost 35 years in long-term care. And I'm a licensed administrator and have done most any role there is in a long-term care community. So I understand what many of you have to go through day in and day out. And then on a personal note, I'm happy to say that my son has joined the company about 2 or 3 years ago. I've lost count now. And so that's been kind of fun to be able to pass the baton on and watch the next generation. I feel like we've raised a lot of people in our organization. That part's kind of fun to be the senior guy at the table. So anyway, Dina.
Yes, thank you, Chris. I'm so excited to be here today. I am so excited to see so many people that are passionate about this subject, and I love just to have a place at the table and to talk to everyone. So, my name is Dina Simones. I work with English Meadows Senior Living. My background is actually business and theology. Prior to working for English Meadows, I worked for Guardian Pharmacy for many, many years, and they were clients of mine. So I was well acquainted with them and who they were and their vision when I came on board. And I just love their unrelenting passion to serve people. And so I've worked in every aspect of the home office here at English Meadows. We work out here on the Eastern coast and are in 5 different states. Our heart is dementia and memory care, though we also work in assisted living and independent living as well. And I'm just excited to be here. Get started.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you, Gina. I'll just share a couple of things about James. Some of you might know James Lee, the founder and CEO of Better Groves. Again, unfortunately, he cannot join us, but there's one thing that I've always loved about James's work is his very innovative and unparalleled dedication to serving people with living with cognitive change. And if you want to have any idea of what he stands and what Better Grove stands for, is just a visual representation. This is their marketing budget. So Better Grove is a assisted living memory care in Texas, close to Austin. And this is how they talk about their work. And this is a sign that you can see in the street. And it basically says that love goes beyond dementia. And they've been very successful at the work they do, not only because they focus on love, but also focus on innovation and how to make sure that we're constantly challenging the status quo, focusing on the elders that we serve. So that's a quick word for James. If you want to be connected with him, he has a very active LinkedIn profile, and I learn almost weekly, if not daily, from him. So with that, let's start and go ahead into our discussion. So, Chris and Dina, when we were preparing, one of the questions that I was really interested is, you both are leaders with obviously a number of years of experience within your organization. When you think about this notion of dementia inclusion, what do you think the future holds from a almost like philosophical viewpoint? Where does your mind go when we talk about these things? Chris, do you want to start?
Sure. I think expectations are going to be higher than they probably are now, frankly. I think that people are going to expect that their loved one has the right to live with purpose. And if I could sum up that one word, purpose, probably sums up my thoughts in general. But I think that's where the future has to be for one to be successful in caring for any group of elders, those who live with or without dementia. It's living with purpose. And I think that's the expectation of the market as well.
Thank you. Dina?
Absolutely. I think that's Chris makes a great point, and I think purpose is definitely going to drive a vast foundation, right, of the future for dementia. And I think what's exciting to me is more and more people, as evidenced by this meeting today, are coming to the table to discuss these things. Education is at an all-time high, I think, right, concerning dementia and activities and person-centered care and working within the communities and in between departments and even with local partners and vendors and community departments is really coming to the table. COVID has really put us in a place, I think, to change the way people think and problem solve. For a long time, I know we discussed this a little bit before, and for a long time, I think it's been business as usual, right? People have been under the guise that this is the way it's always been done in long-term care. The obstacles that we have are insurmountable. We can't get over those things. And we were kind of in a rut. And I think though COVID was a great obstacle and challenge, it also has caused us to come out of that business tradition and begin to look at things differently, to engage people differently, to engage one another differently, not just in a negative way, but in a positive way. Our education, our IT, I think the sky's the limit where we're going in the future with all of this. And I think it's so great that we're all interested in learning how to best give a voice. I thought that was great. I caught the last part of the first session. That is so true. We want to give our residents a voice, regardless of where they are in their cognitive abilities. And how do we do that, right? Especially if they are advanced with dementia. We want to make sure that we're hearing them in a manner that allows them to speak what they still want in their lives, because they're not just there taking up space until they move on. It's important that they have purpose, like Chris is talking about, that they have a voice in shaping their future. And I think we're learning how to engage and do that better and better. And I'm very excited about it.
Thanks so much, Tina. You're right. Like the previous session, the first session, was talking a lot about respect. Like, the person is always there, always there. And I think it's just difficult if we're not educated enough about what dementia includes. We're going to make mistakes, and I'm the first one to make mistakes. I remember making mistakes along with my grandmother, and so we're here to learn, we're here to progress. But I absolutely share your excitement, Dina. James, one of the things that is so important for him and Better Grows is this notion of unconditional joy. Like, how do we focus on unconditional joy for our residents, our family, and staff? So great thoughts. Thank you for unpacking that a little bit, and actually unpacking slightly further. Chris, I'm excited to hear, because I know you have such not only rich and long experience, but to this point, still very thought-provoking compared to what the rest of the industry does today. So how do you think about dementia inclusion with you and your organization?
Part of me wishes we just didn't even use the diagnosis, if you want to know the truth. Yeah. I think we're almost better off not knowing, if you will, and forcing ourselves to include rather than say that we have the opportunity to exclude. So we found ourselves not a big proponent of education. We all need to be as educated as we possibly can be in dealing with those who live with dementia. So I'm not diminishing that one bit. However, I think from an inclusionary standpoint, we need to work harder to say that we are all part of one community and we are all welcome together, and we should care for one person the same as we do the other. Understanding there's limitations, and I realize that not everybody fits in a box. I've been around long enough to understand that, but it's so often it's how we think that will give the results that we need. So that if we think of all people with not having dementia, then we will come closer to getting the results that we're looking for, and that is caring for someone with dementia as if they don't have dementia. And again, that's not to discount those important nuances that we need to know, but it is to include them in everyday life. I was sitting in one of our nursing homes the other day visiting with the administrator, and the van was on the front portico, and maintenance guy was walking around it, which was pretty normal. And all of a sudden, a couple of fishing poles get put in the van. And I said, well, who's going fishing? And I was informed that one of the elders who lives with dementia, his passion in life is fishing. And so he was loading up for a fishing trip. And he wasn't the only one going either. So our thought process is that everyone who lives with us and works with us has some purpose in life, some life passion, something that drives them, whatever that may be. And it is that grouping of passions and purpose that weaves the fabric that creates how that community lives and evolves and is its own organism. So fishing that day was purposeful living for that small group of people that jumped in the van and headed off.
Thanks for sharing that story, Chris. Before we move on to Dina, Chris, I know that your organization, I think, was the first one to open its doors in the state of Mississippi. And if you go to your website, it says, quote unquote, our doors are open.
Right.
And obviously, we're talking about this locked door. And I placed in the chat a video that's on your website about that idea. Can you tell us about that as well?
Sure. So in the mid 90s, our company created probably the first dedicated memory care unit in Mississippi. And we were really proud of it. Had a couple of psychologists that we hired and architect and worked through the whole process. And that was all good. And it was fairly successful for a number of years. And then we bump into Al Power, and I'm sure many of you on this webinar have read his books. First one, Dementia Beyond Drugs, and I think we're probably mentioned in his second book. Mm-hmm. And Al's a great guy, and I haven't seen him in a bit, but know him well. And he really is a thought-provoking individual, and got us thinking a lot about the then 3 memory care units that we had inside of our broader properties. And we really got to looking at problems we were having with them, and operational. There seemed to be this sort of segregation of this group and that group, and then the segregation of staff care partners with this group and that group. And it really became a bit almost chaotic. And so we decided, and Amy Ivy, one of our administrators, finally had enough and probably led the charge in that. And so we decided one by one to just see if we can't reverse that whole memory care locked unit, if you will. And of course, the whole community has to be safe, and that's step number one. But beyond that, we found great successes after we dialed that concept back and said, okay, we're going to all be part of this. And I remember well, one nurse on the non-memory care neighborhood got a little grumpy when she had a couple extra visitors, and then after about a week, someone from the other neighborhood would call and say, hey, I'm checking on Aunt Tootie, and she says, oh, don't worry about her, she's fine over here. She's found her little spot on the sofa, and we've become good friends. So it gave us a way to really grow as a community. So for us, it worked really well. And I'm not preaching that there is a one way for everybody by any means at all. And I'm not trying to degrade any memory care unit at all. But I am saying that it is an experience that we learned a lot from, and did work well for us. And we find that for us, the idea of inclusion really has been successful for us. And the video is really, I just listened to it this morning again. It's has a little bit of age on it, but it's still very relevant. And some folks are one of the girls that I think I raised is still in that video and still with us. But anyway, it was kind of fun. So those are my thoughts. I hope I answered your question.
Absolutely. And the video, you really, really sense the excitement of your staff. And for me, that's magical. So yeah, definitely. Thank you so much, Chris. Dina?
Yes. I believe that for inclusion, I think it is going to begin with education. And Chris touched on that a little bit. I think it's creating a culture and a mindset of inclusion with staff and members in the building and team members, but also with families and even our partners that are coming in, is making certain that we're creating that culture and that mindset to approach dementia and those residents and everything that involves them. It's a vast topic, but with the mindset already of inclusion. And I think that we're going to have to get everybody to the table, and we're going to have to prepare clear and competent information and bring people to that culture. I think it really begins there.
As you were talking, Dina, something that we didn't really discuss in our prep, but I think you kind of alluded to that, which is that education is for everyone, including our residents. And I'm sure, we've discussed it a little bit, like sometimes assisted living doesn't want to mingle with memory care, and even sometimes vice versa. But that notion of education is truly for everyone, truly, truly for everyone. Now, obviously, being in your position as the CEO, quote unquote, like this vision enabler for your organization, it's great to have the vision, that's your role, but then obviously we also get into it needs to happen, right? So what do you feel is blocking your vision, or what are the challenges that are slowing that vision from becoming reality today? And Chris, why don't we start again with you?
Sure. We talked about education. We are having to educate people in a very base level that we didn't have to educate people before. And that's okay. You have to do it. You can't say that you can't lower your bar and say, well, this is acceptable. It's still not. So, for example, we've got a document that's called Cultivating Kindness, and it's fairly simple and straightforward, and things that many of us learned at home, but not all of us learned at home.
Mm-hmm.
So there's some fairly basic life skills that we're having to see ourselves teach, and sort of create parameters that people need to live around. But again, it's still, you still have to do it and move forward. We're big on empowerment. We do a lot by committee, and we hire by committee. We grow by committee, and if you don't work out on one of our teams, then you're going to be asked to leave by a committee, and a committee of your peers and elders too. So everything has to be operationalized to do that, and you've got to really educate people on how to work as a group, and that doesn't come as natural as it used to. Some of how we deal with people with our cell phones that are attached to our hips now is an impediment, and we've got to sort of peel those away. So we can have a one-on-one conversation here. Now, it's great that we're doing this now. We can reach a lot of people, but still, you have to be able to have that emotional intelligence to have those one-on-one conversations. And some of that you have to teach. You have to operationalize those things. Mm-hmm. And if you don't operationalize something, it will not happen. You can have a cultural push and a cultural philosophy and all these things, but if you don't operationalize your culture, it will not happen. That kindness document that I just talked about, it gets every week there's some portion of that gets woven into stand up religiously, and if you don't do that, it'll just go by the wayside. It'll be another nice document that's in a notebook, never to be seen again. So mm-hmm. If your culture is not operationalized, it will not happen.
Mm-hmm. 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 Thanks, Chris. Dina?
So I feel like this is going to go back to some degree to culture again and frontline staff. I think, frontline staff is the lifeblood, right? They are the foundation, they are the heart, they are the life of our industry, and of being able to successfully carry out any visions that we do bring into reality. And so I think what I see often is not necessarily that people don't care. If you're in long-term care, you love people and you care. I think that the challenge is creating a culture for people to hope again, for that frontline staff who's tired and who feels like it has always been business as usual, or at times maybe they're even scared of change because they're not sure what that change brings, and they feel like they've seen that so much in the past, like I've heard that and I've tried that and I've seen that tried, and nothing ever really brings to fruition the visions that we're talking about. But to be able to create a culture where they believe what we propose is possible, and they hope again in the change that we can bring to make a better lives for people in our buildings. And I think that's what we're looking for, is that culture and that ability to inspire our frontline staff and then support them in the vision that we're casting.
Mm-hmm. I think we have to be present to do that too.
Absolutely.
Dina and I and all the others, administrators on this call, whoever, you have to be present. And being present is really being there and listening and teaching and setting expectations. And I don't care if you're listening to somebody about problem in their personal family, or you're picking up a piece of trash on the way in, between the car and the front door, your presence is meaningful, and it is noted whether you realize it or not.
Yeah, I actually had a question further on that, because I know that both of you have leadership experience at the community level, but also at the quote-unquote multi-site level, right? So for example, for you, Dina, I know that your organization, and it's exciting, but your organization is expanding, right? You're growing. How do you think about the communication between you, your home office, and then people within the community down to the frontline person? How do you think about managing that?
So we try to make certain that we are within a half a day's drive of any building that we manage, operate, or own. I am on site a lot. I am there especially a lot in transitions of new buildings into our portfolio in the first 3 to 6 months. I have very talented, wonderful regionals that work within each of my regions. And I make certain they're not overworked, that they do have the time themselves to be in those buildings, that each of them also have regional directors of care that can assist with those sides, that no one is in a position where they don't have time to stop and talk to staff when it's necessary, to stop and train individuals. Not everybody is trained in the things that maybe they need to know, from budgets to financials to just how to talk with a family member. And I know that we would often say, well, surely executive directors have been dealing with that for forever. Sometimes they get to that position and they're afraid to say, no one's ever really showed me this. No one's ever really taught me this. And so I just make sure they're able to spend that time with their staff and with the buildings. I like to go in and get to know the family members. I like to know the residents' names. I sit down and make sure that I eat a meal in every building, and I sit out in the dining room. I try to be there in the evenings with them. Residents love when you come to dinner with them. Absolutely love it. So, and our regionals do the same. The executive directors are required. One of the first things we say to anyone that works in our building is, we don't want you in your office. We want you out among the people and on the floor. So I think that it's just making certain that you are bringing people to your team that share that same vision and desire to be among the people.
That notion of empowerment, was, obviously seems to resonate with both of you quite a lot, which is how you enable that. Let me take a step back. In dementia care, the person's always there, right? We want that. But to enable that, we realize that the frontline staff needs to be respected as a person. So that person needs to be a person. So that idea of empowerment is essential for the organization. Chris, I'm curious, going back to one of the challenges that you mentioned, which is each generation is different. For example, we talked about cell phone, we talked about this notion of instant gratification. How does your organization think about it? I know it's difficult, but how do you make sure that all your frontline has their voice?
Yeah. I think empowerment is huge for not only, you can't have empowerment of one group and not another. You either have an empowering culture or you don't. So it's just as important to empower the elder who lives with dementia to go on the efficient trip as it is to empower the staff care partner to make the decisions about who is going to be his or her teammate in caring for elders who live with dementia, as an example. But the whole empowerment piece, I think, is key to showing staff care partners what our culture really is. It's a bit foreign for some folks, though. Many people want to just show up and work. So you've got to sort of, it's kind of like opening a can on a camping trip when you forgot your can opener. Getting in there is a little bit difficult sometimes to explain to people that no, time out here. You are empowered to make this decision. Now, that doesn't mean you don't teach people how to work as a group to make decisions, you certainly go through that. The Eden Alternative has a great set of tools to take you through that. But it's really important to me that culture be established. And it is, once someone gets their brain wrapped around it and starts working in that empowering environment, you sort of see them open up and to become a different person, quite frankly, and grow themselves. And when people are happy and growing at a job, then they're much more likely to hang around, right, Dina? It's
Yes.
and that culture will just keep more people around.
Yes.
Somebody argue that. Now it's a little. Some people can't. Some leaders can't wrap their brain around it. But for me, it's good Lord, it's great. I'll just give you the parameters and you just have at it.
Absolutely.
There's nothing like community wisdom. I'm not the smartest guy. I do a horrible job of hiring people. Absolutely horrible. And I quit doing it decades ago. But I've been surrounded by, and I've seen people who I was going to give a little slack over the holiday, and they sent the situation over to the peer committee, and they said, no. I told that girl before the holiday, if she didn't show up, she was going to get docked 3 days pay, or whatever the system was they came up with. I just said, yes, ma'am, and got out of the way. But it's amazing to me what empowerment, how much I've seen people grow given the empowering tools and operationalizing that in our communities. It's to me, it's just been utterly amazing.
Yeah. Dina, anything you want to share on that?
Yeah, so I was going to say, I had written down a couple of questions that I was interested in from everyone that's joined today. And I think one of the things that fits right here is I'd like to know from everyone that's joined the meeting today, what makes them feel empowered and validated? Like what that's going to inspire them as employees. It doesn't matter what level they are in the company. We all have those things that make us feel validated and inspired. So I'd kind of like to hear back from some of the audience on what gives them that validation, that empowerment, that purpose. What does that actually look like? Because those are just words until we put them into actual actions. What does that look like within the community? I would be very interested in hearing from the audience.
That's an amazing question, Dina. So audience, please, if you're in front of your computer, obviously, or you're supposed to be in front of your computer, but open up the chat. And we have a very specific question for you, or Dina, I love the question, which is please type in, how do you feel empowered by your organization? What makes it that you feel you matter, your voice is heard, and all of that? Amazing thoughts.
I saw
Dina,
not micromanaging.
I'll let you read everything, every word that's typed up, Dina. I want you to...
I'm trying to read them. I was about to ask you, will you have like a transcript of this? Because I would love to have it after.
Happy to share it with you. Absolutely.
So I saw don't micromanage me. And then I also saw early on enabling someone to enact their own ideas.
Right. Input. Use my input. I saw that.
Yes, there you go. Yes. Inclusion.
As you were asking this question, Dina, one thought that I had, which is that, I mean, you both have more experience than I do in this industry, but something that I feel in this industry is that you can't prepare people for everything they're going to encounter. There's just no way. You're dealing with, I mean, humans are just humans, and that's a great thing, don't get me wrong. But sometimes when people come from other industries, they don't expect that universe they can deal with. And so sometimes, there are other industries where there's less confidence placed on frontline people. And I wonder, as leaders, so that's a question, Chris and Dina, for you, when you, quote unquote, inherit people from other industries, how do you make them understand that you trust them? Does that make sense as a question? How do you make them feel you trust them? Dina, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
So for me, I sit down with everyone and I just go through a little bit about my vision as an individual and our vision as a company. I make sure that they understand that they are empowered to do their job. A lot of people have been micromanaged, I think, in our industry, and maybe that wasn't always from a negative place from people. Maybe they were just afraid to allow people to do their job. But we make sure we hire individuals that we feel like fit our vision and also are capable. And if I hire you to do your position, then I'm going to trust you to do that position. I'm going to make certain that I am coming in and I'm giving you support where you need it. For example, if you were someone that maybe didn't have a strong financial background and you've just been afraid to ask someone, show me these things about the budget, then we're going to make sure that we get that education to them. But I think it's important for people to know that they're valued and they are more than capable of doing their job. And when they're not, it's okay to raise their hand and say, I need assistance and help with this. And that's not going to be a negative impact on them or a way that we view them. I'm looking for attitudes and I'm looking for heart. I can train anyone to do almost anything,
Yeah.
but I need individuals who feel like this is where they want to be and this is what they want to be doing with their life, and to understand that what we do does matter. And so I want to make sure I tell everyone that comes on our staff that we have a lot of wonderful companies in this industry caring for seniors. And so it's not going to be you finding the path of least resistance and obstacles, or this company is better than that company. You're going to deal with rough days and patches. You're going to deal with timelines and ridiculous schedules and things that you really shouldn't have to do at times, no matter who you work for. But you need to determine who you want to do those difficult days with. And I've determined that at English Meadows. I know who stands by my side in the battle, and I am confident in who I work alongside. And so I think that we just let people know that they're a part of a family and a team when they come on board, and we will help you. We just need the right heart and the right attitude and desire to be a part of that team. And we see people come alive. I want to see our staff inspired. I want them to feel like their life matters. They're going to be at work more than they're going to be anywhere else. And so I want to make sure that that time is spent doing things that bring them alive, make them happy.
Yeah. Your the chat got very busy as you spoke, Dina. Heart and attitude and so on. And you know what? It's okay for you to say that English Meadows is the best company in the world. We'll agree to that. Chris, I'd love to hear. I mean, I'm sure you're similar, but like, yeah, what's your view on that?
Yeah, totally agree. I will say this, when I'm hiring a leader for a community, I prefer they be from another industry, quite frankly. I don't want to have to unwind anything that's kind of been learned on that corporate side. And I'm not talking about a place like Tina's that is run by an individual. I'm talking about a place that's there's just a lot of sort of corporate America in healthcare, and I'll try not to get on that bandwagon here, but so the personalization of it is sometimes out the window. So I actually prefer to bring someone in from another industry who has the right attitude, the right heart. And if you give me those things, and you know, the desire to make a difference, then we'll, like Dina says, we'll take care of the rest of it. But and I don't want to have to unlearn something that you've learned from corporate nursing home America. I really would prefer not to have to do that. So and so many people, they've never been empowered because the corporate structure has said it's got to be done this way, or you're just not a good fit for us, and they just need robots, and that's just not who we are. And it's troublesome for me to unwind that. So I'd rather just start with someone who's from a different industry, frankly. Sometimes, not all the time. And I'm not trying to disparage any.
No.
There's plenty of great care that goes on in those organizations, but I do sometimes feel the people that are not able to go and do exactly what they likely want to do. And so I do have a bit of empathy for that.
You know, Chris, as you were talking, actually, as you were both talking, I was thinking about James again, who unfortunately could not be here, but you know, James would have loved to be here one way or the other. And there's a thought that he always speaks about, which is that everyone within his organization and beyond, he sees them as people that are influencers and can be influenced, right? And I think this notion of influence only works if you're empowering people. So that's a very profound idea. Dina, and I'm about to cue our next topic here, but you speak so well about this notion that it's okay to fail, right? Let's learn it's okay to fail. And I think that's, both of you leaders, I'm sure, are things that's really important to you. Now, the next one is the bandwagon one, so we'll try to keep it short. But Chris, I'll start with you, which is, sometimes when we think about this future, this all-inclusive, inclusive actually future, there's this big R word, regulations, which we, sometimes we need to use. Sometimes it's stopping us or challenging us. Talk to us a little bit about your journey and how you think about it.
Well, I guess I encourage people to think above and beyond the regulations that in many states, they're called minimum standards. And I'm not much of a minimal guy unless I'm going on a trip and I'm packing my backpack. So I just encourage people to think above and beyond the regulations. And they've never been an impediment. I did run into a situation one time where I couldn't get around the corner with the state regulator on a dementia care unit that I wanted. It actually had to do with opening the doors. And I said, well, I want one that doesn't have locked doors on it. And they said, well, you can't have it because that's our regulations call for a locked door. So, well, you don't need a locked door. We quit segregating people in 1965. And that didn't go over too well. And so I sent in a letter and I said, well, no more, thank you. We just won't have a dementia care unit licensed by you. So we still took care of plenty of people with dementia. So I have had some instances where the regulations weren't quite fitting with what we were trying to accomplish. But all in all, I think if you have the mindset that we're going to operate above and beyond those regulations, then I think you're just better off with that mindset. I see Dina shaking her head, so I'm confident she's agreeing with me. And now that is not to minimize the importance of regulations. I get it. I don't agree with the 5-star system. Unless you're Jesus Christ, you're not gonna, you're just not going to be statistically successful. So I think some of that's irrelevant. Consider the source and so consumer beware there. But in general, I think our calling is to work above and beyond the regulations and let them be what they are.
Dina,
Yeah.
yeah.
100%. I agree 100%. We actually include that in our training and in our conversations, especially with our care staff, that there are regulations and certainly we uphold those and we give those respect. However, our standards are higher.
Yeah.
And so that's just a place to start. And we make sure that we communicate what our standards are. And so I 100% agree with that. Couldn't have said it better.
Yeah. I guess as we not wrap up, but almost thinking about starting to wrap up that discussion, Chris and Dina, one, I'd love the audience to kind of quote unquote, get to understand how you operate, which is, tell us if you could fix one thing, right? If you had a wish of something that could go away or could be better, what would that be when you think about, weeks, months, years ahead?
Who's first?
Well, you, why not you?
All right. I wasn't sure. Sometimes when I'm on a Zoom call, I'm just going to tell all the people out there, I'll just be sitting there thinking it's not my turn. And they're like, Dina, wake up. So just making sure that was not happening. So yes, repeat the question for me. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. If you could fix one thing or make one wish, what would that be?
I think it goes back to what we said before with our frontline staff. They, in my opinion, are the most important thing in our industry. But I feel like we really have to make them believe that what we propose is possible. If I could remove the obstacle of individuals feeling like they are not validated, that we are not going to change the things that we tell them we want to change, we can change, or we could change.
Yeah.
I would like to see that whenever I walk into new buildings, I can feel it in the air, that hopelessness from staff, that they just feel like they have not been respected and valued, and they just feel like you're another person in the room telling them the same thing they've heard a million times. That's what I would like to remove. I would like to be able to look people in the eye and tell them we're here to make a change. We're here to make lives better, not just for the residents, but also for the team members who have chosen this as their career path in their life, and that is possible, and we can do that together. That's what I want. I want to see hope in the faces of our team members, and I want them excited about what they're going to do tomorrow morning.
Thank you. Thank you, Ethan. Chris?
If I could fix one thing, it would be to get staff care partners to care as much as I do.
Mm-hmm.
And that might extend to colleagues as well.
Mm-hmm.
If we could just get more people to care as much as those of us, likely 800, I can't see the 881 people on this call care, then the world would be a better place.
Mm-hmm.
In particular for elders for whom we care and have the honor and privilege of caring.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. One of the, you might remember when we were preparing for this call, Chris and Dina, James had an interesting thought. I think we smiled. I laughed about it. The one thing that he thought would be helpful is that regulators should have the requirement to work in memory care, ready to really understand, because we were going down this path of regulations and how it's blocking us, and your story, Chris, of, well, if it's going to be that tough, I'm just not going to go with the license. I'm not going to go with the packet of regulations. And I think that'd be pretty interesting to have a way for regulators to better understand what you both as leaders go through, but also maybe what your frontline have to do every day. Right? That would be pretty an informed change, I would say.
Yes.
Chris, you had spoken a little bit about getting to a yes, and I love that idea. Do you mind expanding that a little bit, if you don't mind?
So I think one way to empower people and to help them understand what empowerment really is to, and this is particular when you're dealing with elders living with purpose. So let's say, for example, an elder was passionate about cooking. All right, and we'll say they didn't. Somebody brought up the idea that, well, they've been cooking all their lives, they don't want to cook anymore, and that may well be. But that aside, I remember we had an elder one time that was passionate about cooking, not only cooking but cooking gumbo. She was a Cajun from South Louisiana and was living up in North Mississippi and wanted to cook gumbo for the whole group. Well, you've got some regulatory issues to deal with there, right? So it would be easy to say, I'm sorry, you can't cook gumbo because the kitchen regulations don't allow you to be elders to be in the kitchen, which I think is very debatable, by the way. So there's ways you can get that matter, even if you say, even if you throw in the towel early and say, well, we can't go in the kitchen, which we would do anyway, by the way. And but getting to yes is the exercise of taking that instance, for example, and saying, okay, team of CNAs, housekeepers, and whomever else, how are we going to make this a yes? And drilling that down until the cooking of the gumbo becomes a yes. And even if it's not done in the kitchen, you can still cook gumbo, right? You can cook it on the porch. That's probably where it's done in South Louisiana anyway. So it's getting people to think through the process of one barrier after another and knocking down each one. And the success of knocking down those barriers is pretty exciting to see people come and see them come up with their own solution. And again, it'll be a lot better solution than I would have come up with. So that would be one of my examples of getting to yes. Cooking gumbo. Love gumbo. I'll have it for lunch today, probably.
I love it. But that reminds me, one of the thoughts that James was sharing, which is that, you know, at one point when we were preparing, it got a little personal in a good way from James, which is that, you know, he considered leaving senior living.
Yeah.
Right? He did consider it. And I'm sure that many people in the audience might have. But the one thing he said that got him to think about it, even think about it, not because of his life, because of the no sayers, right? This constant no, 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 no. So I find it just inspiring to have you both as leaders, as CEOs of your organization, to think about, I mean, you're here to enable the yes, right? You're here to enable this idea of empowerment. So these are, I think, I mean, in a way, I want to say it's radical because it is change. And Chris, you alluded to very top-down organization that unfortunately still exists. But we know that that's the future. The way you're thinking about it is definitely the future. So, you know, maybe going into our next question here, which is, you know, I'd love, you know, share your thoughts, and maybe we'll start with you, Chris. Share your thoughts about how would you invite the audience to take a next step, right? If they were your frontline staff, or actually anyone on the line here, or almost 900 participants, if they were to start work tomorrow morning, what would you invite them to do as a next step on this?
So a couple of thoughts on that.
Yeah.
As I've said before, we have to operationalize things to make them work. If they're not part of our day-to-day operation, it won't work. Like the kindness document I mentioned, if we don't operationalize things, they just won't come together. Also, every individual can make a difference. Every individual can make a difference. You can improve your culture in your organization if you're a housekeeper. It works a lot better when the CEO and the administrator and all the corporate staff and everybody else is working to change that culture in a positive way as well. But one person can make a difference, and a long-term care community is a great breeding ground for one person to make a difference. Okay. The other thing, that this is an experiment that we've done and have no data yet, but I'm convinced that it's a good idea. So I'm going to throw it out. I'm going to be brave and throw it out there. You got to be brave if you're a leader, right? So this is my brave step of the day. So I want to encourage people to encourage groups of people to keep a tally of how many people, as an individual, how many people you help during the day. So if we want things to improve, we measure them, right? So we want people to work together and help each other as a team. We want people to set each other up for success and promote each other's success. So the way you do that is to help each other, right? Just really so simple. So if we measure that, will it improve? I bet it will, maybe, right? So let's try it. Keep a tally, encourage team members to keep a tally of how many people they help during the day. All right, that includes elders, teammates, vendors, family members, someone on the phone, a doctor, whomever, nurse, whomever it is. Keep a tally of how many people you help during the day and see what the numbers do. I bet you, people are going to be amazed at how many people they help. I already know this is happening. And B, they're going to be amazed to see the numbers go up. All right. And then the other point I want to make is slightly the opposite way of viewing kind of working of teamwork. All right, I've got this thing about what people spew out on social media. And I was taught that if you couldn't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. All right. And probably a lot of other people were too. How about if you can't type anything nice, don't type anything at all. There you go. These are my gray-headed words of wisdom.
Oh, Chris, that's actually a very fair point. Dina?
Yes, so I think that was a great idea, Chris, to on purpose look to see at how many lives you're impacting and the difference that you are making to inspire yourself. I think that's a great point. I would also encourage individuals to communicate, and especially in the areas that currently seem difficult to communicate. Often we will feel Well, I try to communicate with my supervisor or the home office or my coworker or whomever, but they don't want to communicate with me, or they're difficult to communicate with. They're a difficult person to be around. But I think that it's important that those are the ones you need to press into. So the people that are easy to communicate with are probably not your issue, but the people that are difficult to communicate with or that you don't have any communication with, just don't give up. Press into that. Be brave enough to believe and hope in the vision of your company, and to work those hard days when it doesn't feel like anything's changing. Change is possible. And I think that that's where we have to begin. We have to begin with that communication and the purposeful decision to hope in those visions and make a difference, because it's not going to be done without them. It's impossible. If they're not doing that in the buildings, it's not going to change. So that would be my next steps.
Love it.
Well
And
stated.
it's, yeah, I mean, both of your thoughts merge so well together. It is, obviously it starts from the top. You know, there's a question about 20 minutes ago in the chat, which is this idea of C-level leadership. What does that mean? C-level leadership is what Dina and Chris think about every day. Is they have a vision with their organization about the future. And what Dina and Chris think about every day, and correct me if I'm wrong, but throughout the day, throughout the night, is how do you enable that? How do you empower? And I think these were wonderful examples and wonderful cues. So, you know, as I wrap up, I just want to ask you briefly, is there anything else you wanted to share with the audience today, Dina or Chris?
Yeah, I've got to piggyback on what Dina said. Having a conversation is always the first step toward making a change, or just getting to know somebody, whatever. The conversation is not always easy, but you really got to commit to have that conversation. Back to the kindness document that I mentioned, cultivating kindness. That's, you know, number 5 on here. Having a conversation is so important, and it pulls two people together. And again, our culture is not conversing like we used to. So it's even that much more important for us as leaders to push that and to teach that and to show the example of that, even when it's difficult. That's when it's most important to have a conversation, quite frankly.
Thanks, Chris. Dina, one last final thought?
I just want to thank everybody for being on the call today. I am so excited to have this conversation. I cannot wait to see suggestions and comments from the audience. Every best idea from every company, in my opinion, has come from somebody on the front line. So I am really excited, and I just am thankful. I'm thankful for the responses and for the information to help me be better.
Yeah.
Thanks for all that you do, those of you on this call, that everybody
Yes.
everybody's important to this.
You beat me to it, Chris. Thank you. Well, and actually, let me thank you both for sharing such a powerful, inspirational, but also vulnerable view of leaders, CEOs. You know, Chris, I'll just challenge you to start your tally today, right now, because I'm sure you've helped more than 800 people today. So congratulations, and thank you for that. Same thing to you, Dina. You know, as we wrap up this, I just want to share one thought, which is, obviously I'm biased, but I believe that senior living is one of the best industries ever. It's just such an amazing, it's a type of industry where it's hard sometimes, but often in a day you can put one in and get 2 out. And it's just because you're impacting so many people, again, to Chris's point. So with that, you know, I do deeply want to thank you both for the time, the respect you're showing to the industry by showing up for an activity and life enrichment program. And I'm just so excited to see what you're going to be doing with your organizations in the future for your teams, yourself, and the residents and their families. So thank you very much, both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Charles. It's well done. Thanks,
Thank you. Yeah. So